So I'm super happy to have you sit down with us. You've been my partner now for almost 2 years. You're the founder of HiTouch Libations, what I consider to be the best distributor in Southern California. But beyond that, like you're like my kind of guy. Like you're a guy that grew up in the back room of a grocery store. Tell me a little bit how you got started. You started as were you an Odwalla route driver when you started?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I got my box cutter in grocery, and I spent 10 years in natural food grocery.
Working for the store?
Yeah, Mrs. Gooch's,
I didn't
Whole
know that.
Foods, Mother's.
Wow.
And
so you know your way around stocking shelves.
Yeah, so I was already like, I had been on night crew, I had been building end cap displays.
So you have a lot of hoodies.
I started as a bulk buyer, right? Then got into dairy box, realized I'm a tropical kid, like I don't like the cold, like I hate, and I'm like ADHD, and I couldn't like stack
Orange County guy in the cold box.
I was like, get me out of the cold box, so that meant the grocery team. And I was like, dude, I'll do night crew. I don't care. I don't want to be in that milk box. And so surprisingly enough, we have a refrigerated distribution company.
Yeah.
But,
no, and you lead me through a walk through that warehouse. Like, can we speed this up? The door is way over there.
Yeah, exactly. But no, so I got my start in grocery, which then, the money wasn't great working in grocery. Even at Whole Foods, where people could make careers back in the day. I always.
But it was steady. You had benefits. Were you in the union?
No, it was not. Because
Okay.
Gooch's and Whole Foods was very non-union. So I always had a side hustle, and I don't know if you know this, Dino, but my side hustle in the early 2000s was, I had a booth at the Orange County Marketplace selling tea and coffee.
Oh, I didn't know that. I was waiting for you to say breakdancing.
It was Czar's Tea Leaf. And
Oh, wow.
I was selling teapot sets, gourds. My whole thing was loose leaf tea. And
You've been a founder a long time.
Yeah, so I had tea, and people were like, "What is that weed?" Like I'd have like these displays, and because I was
It's Orange County,
and I had grocery store business, so I went to the owners of Mother's at the time. I was like, "Hey, I'm starting a business, at the swap meet. I just want to let you guys know I'm going to order products from the catalog under my own account. Are you good with that?" And the owner at the time, Bruce McGrim, was, "Czar, I think that's great. I started my business at the swap meet selling leather goods. You should go for it. You don't even have to ask permission. Why are you asking me permission?" I said, "Well, the fairgrounds is like 3 miles away from the store, so I didn't."
You're going to hear
I don't
about
want to
it.
get fired. Like I need my benefits, and so he gave me permission to and it was Nature's Best. So this is pre-Katie. This kind of dates me, but this is pre-Katie. So this was Nature's Best catalog. I'm like flipping through. I'm a buyer for the store, so I get to take the catalogs home. I set up my own wholesale account, and so I'm ordering shippers of tea and stuff and teapot sets. And so you can imagine this parking lot swap meet 10 by 10 tent with full-on grocery displays. Like I'd flank it with,
box cutting done perfectly.
Tea shippers, and my wife sewed me this beautiful like Asian dragon like tapestry, and so it was very Asian-esque. I had like Japanese teapot sets, and I knew a thing or two about merchandise. I spent 10 years in grocery, so I had a pretty, beautiful looking 10 by 10 swap meet booth. It looked kind of like a tea shop.
So how do you give up the tea shop to become an Odwalla driver?
I held on to the hustle for like 3 or 4 years during my Odwalla run.
Okay.
So like I basically worked weekends at the fairgrounds while I was slinging Odwalla juice. And
that ain't easy. Like there's a lot of drivers' jobs that are easy. Odwalla is not one of them.
No,
You're selling
Odwalla
eaches.
wasn't one of them, and I literally remember like falling asleep at the table. Like during dinner with the family. Like I would be eating, and I would just like start nodding off. My wife's like, and the cool thing about the swap meet though is like I brought my kids. My wife would come. I was on the food aisle because we had tea, and so by default I was next to all the beer vendors. Orange County Marketplace, you want to be next to the beer guys, like 'cause that's kind of where all the action
For real.
is. And so I would remember like I'd get there like at 4 o'clock and set up, and then my wife and kids wouldn't show up sometimes till like 10 or 11. That's the first time I could leave the booth and get a break. And I remember, and my wife never wanted to be alone at the booth. She's like, "Don't freaking leave me. I have to talk to people, and I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't know price." I had like hundreds of items, which I made up pricing, and like I just had pricing in my head, and I would kind of do that thing. And so, but I remember I would walk away, and then I would come back, and I would kind of observe the booth, like, and all these guys would be like converge around the booth because my wife was there, like in her. In her like tank top and Daisy Dukes in the summertime at the beer aisle, and guys are like coming up trying to ask her stupid questions like, "What kind of tea is that? Like, does it da?" And then she'd just be like, "Oh my God, come rescue me!" But I'm like, "No, but nobody wants to talk to me. Like out here, like people are looking at me." And the funny thing is, like, being Pacific Islander Asian in the swap meet, what I didn't know was kind of like the swap meet mafia. Like I didn't realize like every single one of these 1,000 vendors, like half of them are like related. Like if you're like, oh no, the stock guy over there told me $5, and he's like, no, that's my cousin. Like there's no way he told you $5. Like, but they're all related, right? And one thing that I could never do, or where I had the biggest struggle, was actually selling tea or teapot sets, or even educating anybody about tea that was Asian. It's like, if like Asian people would walk by and look at me, they were almost mad at me. They'd look at me and be like, and I could never figure out why. And then it dawned on me as I talked to a couple of people that finally would approach me and ask me about pricing. I'm like, oh, these guys shop like 99 Ranch Market, and they realize that I'm selling like a $5 box of tea for like $15 or like $20 at Orange County Marketplace.
They were in on it.
Yeah, they were like, this guy's getting away with murder. And they were, instead of like showing love, they were mad at me.
So you get chased out of the fairgrounds. How does the Odwalla run happen? So you're at Odwalla, Coke acquires it. I imagine that changes the culture.
Yes.
That business goes the way it went, probably because Coke wasn't the same as the original leadership, and consumer preference around sugar and calories and $8 juice changes.
Yeah.
Then what?
I think it's interesting you bring that up. Coke and Odwalla, were probably founded on two opposite spectrums of beverage.
Yeah.
Like Odwalla was, I tell people it was a very like hippie-esque company. Like,
was it really run by the Dinuba crowd?
Yeah, it was. Like in the early days, there was like, if you had problems with somebody, you go meditate, you could go smoke a joint, hug it out, bring your dog to work. It's really good for like vibes, and like they welcome that kind of stuff. And then when Coke came in, they were like, yeah, the dog thing, you guys gotta leave your dogs at home.
We have food here.
Yeah. Like, and there was like adult rules now, and so it's kind of like, I like the Odwalla bunch was a bunch of hooligans. Like they, in the beverage space, they were all the outcasts.
Yeah.
That were
because it was one of the last that was like almost. I mean, I know the drivers didn't own their routes, but it felt like it.
It felt like it, and if you were a DM there, you basically got an early ticket to do everything yourself, and you got a one-on-one kind of workshop on starting your own distribution business because nobody was going to support you.
So when Coke acquired it, there was what, 17 or 25 company-owned nodes?
There was at least 18 to 20 across the country.
And then the rest was done by jobbers.
Jobbers, or they had some direct, but like they tried like the DPI route in some markets. In fact, this market was DPI when I first got hired. I think it was 2002. We had just pulled the brand back from DPI.
And what are the shelf lives? You're talking 90 days?
Back then, it was under 90 days. It was like around
tight.
60.
Tight for a DPI to handle.
Right, and and going back and thinking about it, I mean, it was no more than probably 25 to 28 SKUs. So like,
I tried them all. I went to a tasting. I tried 30 juices
now, right? Like, and you know how many SKUs we're selling now. And we're using about the same size truck.
You sell more than 25 categories.
It's crazy. And people always told me, even at Odwalla, that there was this threshold to DSD and how many SKUs you could truly do. And we don't like thresholds. Like we always like, well, what's the threshold? Well, we could probably do more than that.
But Coca-Cola trucks have 300 SKUs.
Right, exactly. And so I always was like, if you, depending on the route and the route to market and breaking out routes for channel specific retailers, I think you could still run with 100, 200 SKU mix and be very successful. Now, what have learned through some poor decisions is trying to put square pegs in round hole, and even today we're still trying to figure out what is the right rolling inventory for a route in Los Angeles that's going to service a Whole Foods, a Gelson's, an Albertsons, a Bristol Farms. Right? It's like, and I'm being challenged every single day, and I actually don't have the solution even sitting here talking to you right now. Like, we're always kind of polishing what that optimal mix is.
So Coke decides to pull the trigger. Let's keep moving the story along, because really what I want to do is talk about HiTouch. So Coke decides to pull the trigger. They've got all these assets kind of laying around the country. Tell me, in just a minute or two, how does green shoots then become a thing?
So it was around where VEB, was kind of investing in Better For You. Zico, Simply, and Vitamin Water are the three brands that come to mind. And I remember just sitting in these national account rooms, at national account meetings, and sitting in these rooms and being dumbfounded that Coke needed our help. That was the aha for me. I was like, why do you need my help? We're like a bunch of hooligans. We got 17, 20 hubs. Each hub maybe managing 15, 25 trucks. Like, I didn't realize how we were so important to the system. But then it dawned on me. Like, once Coke invested, there was a fallout from certain retailers. Like, they were like, oh, that's going to be watered down. We don't want Coke trucks coming to our facility. And then I was like, oh, we still have a pass to this retailer, this channel where Coke is sort of blackballed. And to me, I'm like, how is Coke blackballed from anyone in LA? Like, who's going to say no, Coke? We won't sell any of your products. To me, that was still very. I mean, even in 2010, I was like, this is impossible that Coke isn't allowed to go to a retailer. And once I realized, no, that's true, they're not allowed, I was like, well, I quit. And I go buy some trucks. Because at the same time, HPP was coming back to light, 2010.
Yeah, it was like the Odwalla kind of got replaced by the rise of the specialty juice, the cold pressed juice.
We were selling kid smoothies, now I'm selling yoga juice. That was sort of the kind of like, that was the terminology we're like trying to express, this better for you refrigerated juice in a bottle is now for grown-ups. We spent a decade selling strawberry banana smoothies.
Yeah. So Green Shoots kind of fills the void that Odwalla had created, right? Because in most markets, like I know in Los Angeles, for instance, you're the only cold DSD in the planet, basically.
Yeah, it's it's interesting that that's still the case, isn't it? I mean, again, we're in Los Angeles. I'm dumbfounded by it. I mean, with all the beer distributors, basically surrounding us.
Yeah, beer doesn't ride to market cold very much. Usually, it's kept in a cold warehouse.
Yeah. And then with the big broadliners, I in the early days felt maybe we were just the crazy guys who see value in what we do, and nobody else sees it as valuable competition, so nobody's trying to compete. Yeah. So I used to think that.
Well, the crazy thing is there's a void, but it's also hard. Like I watch you guys work hard.
And then the reality set in after 5, 10 years, 15 years of doing entrepreneurially. It's like, why do I still feel like I'm in startup world? Like, because
everyone you deal with is a startup company.
Maybe that's part of it, but then the other thing is like, it's really that hard. And the reality is we weren't exclusive in this space because we're the only ones cool enough or smart enough to figure it out. We're exclusive in this space because we're really the only ones who have survived the test of time. Yeah. This is a game of toughness.
Well, if you're going to be dumb, you got to be tough.
Yeah. You know what, Dino? That's not a bad combo, right? And God doesn't give you all the gifts, man. And so smart and strategic wasn't gifts that I feel like are skills or strengths that I ever had.
But you got toughness.
Listen, you fall down enough times, you start to scar up, and that skin gets thick.
So Green Shoots goes the way that it goes. You're standing and looking at an empty warehouse in Huntington Beach. Talk to me about the rise of HiTouch.
I mean, the rise of HiTouch was very organic. I mean, it literally was. It came from an excitement of something new, something fresh, and feeling valuable in an industry so large, like that we could actually make a difference. And then really just in my own personal journey. I mean, we just, sat and watched, Tom Holland and speak about his personal journey. But even for me, I had gained a lot of weight working for Coke. I mean, I was like the refill, the big gulp thing, and I loved soda. I mean, even today, I tell you,
I still love soda. Shout out soda.
But I love the taste of a Dr. Pepper. Like, I still crave it. But I was literally maybe 30, 40 pounds heavier. And so starting the journey, it was also being able to, hey, if I could make money, start a company, and also feel good about how we're making our money, that was a very real thing.
But did you inherit the lease to the building? Did you get the keys to all the trucks?
Yeah, so that was
because it's hard to do. You and I have been trying to cross the chasm for 2 years, and we're just trying to get bigger. You had to go from case 0 to case 1.
Yeah, and again, it was very organic. At Green Shoots, I wasn't on principal. I was kind of like early founding team, and built out LA and got the first official Green Shoots warehouse. And,
That's the one you were on Prince Street, right?
right. And
Dude, that one's weird because were they making DeLoreans next door?
They were making DeLoreans.
Dude, it was like the set of a bad remake of Back to the Future. There was 12 DeLoreans in front of his office every day.
Definitely a Back to the Future, and you should see the people that would stop and take pictures on top of these.
I was one of them.
Yeah. We've seen some wild stuff happen there just with those cars. But yeah, I mean, listen, I think I sometimes scratch my head and just feel blessed that we were able to keep going because, there was padlocks on the doors. There was, and the whole Green Shoots run, let me back up a little bit. The whole Green Shoots run, we were undercapitalized, right? And we were spread way thin. I had like 8 distribution centers across the country and we never had enough capital. And so even when we were trying to get trucks, we created shell companies just to get financing on trucks, which turns out that was a smart move when the company's going into a bankruptcy. I got to go park trucks.
Like, oh no, we're not called that. Our business name is this.
Right. So in liquidation, I had trucks that were off the books that I was able to park in my friendly neighbor's yard, which we fed these guys juice for years, free juice, and so they let us do all kinds of stuff. I also had a forklift that was off the books, which I let my neighbors borrow in case I could get the keys back and get the padlock off the door. I had a forklift. I got 4 trucks, and so I felt like that was almost not a gift, but I felt like we were the rightful heirs. That was like the start of.
And is that where you sourced the early brands too, or the brands that had kind of survived Green Shoots, and was that your early base?
Yeah. So our first brand as HiTouch officially was Saint Benoit milk, which was vat pasteurized, basically raw milk in a glass bottle. Revive Kombucha, which got acquired by Pete's, and Forger Project, which we still have today. Those were our first 3 brands on the trucks. Hangover brands, Dino, from the Green Shoot. So even the fact that they still trusted me with their product, even though, we came from a BK in our other relationship, I also felt, one, obligated to be very transparent and a good operator with that opportunity and with, paying our bills. And I think that was a good discipline to start the company, right? Because and as you know, I mean, we're scrappy, but we've always operated kind of bootstrapped. Like that's all kind of we really know.
Yeah.
And I think, looking back at it, somebody asked me a while back ago, like, what would I have done different? And I think when I really think about it, we've never really thrown a real chunk of change at this business. As expensive as we know this business is, and we've seen brands raise ridiculous amounts of cash to start up a beverage brand, and we've seen what they do with that kind of deployment of funds.
Yeah.
And for us, start a distribution company with less than $500,000 and even make it more than 5 years.
No, you built the whole thing on cash flow. That was one of the things that impressed me. So Danny and I invested.
Hard to do.
I think Danny and I invested in 2023, 2022, something like that, like right in there. And I was looking at, 7 years of financials, and you guys did it all with cash flow.
And we just I tell people I never took a dirty dollar of pallet money and did anything funny with it. There's been times in the business when there's, 10, 15 grand hard cash just in a drawer somewhere. And it was every dollar was the company's dollar. It wasn't mine, the founder's dollar. It was never mine. I never saw it as mine. I paid myself a salary. That's the only, when you looked at our books, we never, sometimes founders, they kind of live off the company funds. Listen, I worked over 10 years at Coke and I had an unlimited credit card and I got to run my own facility and basically do everything. So we were, I knew what you could get away with for sure.
But that's a big head change because if you don't make that cultural shift, you go broke.
Right. But then, when it's your company and it's all you have and you have so little in the kitty to kind of keep the lights on, that operating discipline is one that I think, I don't wish it on my worst enemy, to be honest, but I think it's given us, the discipline required to make it through some really tough years.
But I think that's just you. That's the type of that frugality creates the creativity to provide the operational excellence and I think when you're working with even smaller upstart brands, like being able to understand where they're coming from and give them that kind of real talk about that. And I was even thinking about that earliest, kind of experience that you had at the swap meet. Like, it's great that you had that, because I think being able to put yourself in that position and talk from a stance of like, yes, it's been a while, but I was there. I was selling at a farmer's, market, saying, like, I know that first, talking to somebody and selling that one unit or those types of things. Like, I think those perspectives are invaluable to the people that you work with, because a lot of times, it can seem out of touch sometimes. And I think maybe the high touch, maybe it all makes sense. But, it's one of those things where I think if you were to give you $10 million in capital and you had all this free will to do whatever, like, I think it would be more destructive than good, because
especially 15 years ago.
Yeah.
You hand me that kind of access, I would have definitely messed it up. When you don't have that opportunity to mess it up, and you only get like one life in a video game, you like really pay attention. You don't want to die.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that has just been perpetuating in the entire run. So it's like, I sometimes feel like a lot of it was unplanned, to be honest, right? It's like this constant state of evolving and adapting.
You just show up every day.
It's like evolve, adapt, or die.
Tough.
And show
every
up.
day.
I mean, that's something that I've learned in our partnership with you guys, in LA Libations. I mean, it's Danny's favorite word. 2 words: show up, show up, show up. And I met Danny by showing up. I met you guys. We would show up at all the same places.
Yeah.
And I literally, I've added that part of the artillery to HiTouch, is like that show up mentality, like that, and the don't quit, right? Like, we said this early in our partnership, if you could remember. I said, listen, everybody's kind of a good partner if you're winning.
Yeah.
That's like,
victory has many fathers.
Well, Dino's really nice to his family. Well, like, yeah, most dads are pretty nice to their kids, right? Like, they love their kids. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But new partnerships, when you get a W, it's like you love each other, you hug it out, you're high-fiving, you're celebrating. I mean, listen, our early partnership was, it presented us with some challenges and some trials and some tough conversations, right?
No, I think we tried to stretch it. When I say we, I mean you and me and Danny and Chuck. We really tried to stretch it in to your point, without a lot of capital.
Yeah.
We skinned our knees. And luckily, through the respect the trade has for you, and we got a lot of grace from customers that didn't owe it to us but gave it to us. So now you're in a marketplace like Southern California. You got Reyes on 2 sides, right? They're the beer distributor and the Coke distributor. You got corporate Pepsi bottling group here. You got corporate Cadbury Schweppes here. You've even got corporate Anheuser-Busch here with AB1. How does HiTouch carve out a life for themselves in an environment with like big fish?
Yeah, well, listen, the big fish start us, by eating smaller fish, right? And I think we're very edible.
But
I think the business is.
But the point of distinction is you guys offer cold, right? So that kicks a lot of guys in the tail. But how do you guys get out there and find the brands? Because this is a business where you've got to sign exclusive deals with up and coming brands that then become valuable, that then can move on to bigger systems. Like, what are the things you're looking for? What's the stuff that makes you guys different?
I think continuing to trust our gut on what's trending, innovation, and also, thankfully, after doing it for so long, it's part of the turning over the rocks and kissing a bunch of frogs has gotten easier. I mean, to be honest, I think you see it too, right?
Well, you definitely have a bigger profile. Like, it used to be HiTouch Who, and now it's like, oh, you mean Czar?
All right, but brands do come to us now. Right, and we have an awesome ecosystem.
Yeah,
awesome partners.
No, it's great. We send stuff your way, you send us stuff our way.
And so we've just, because of the ecosystem that we kind of, the pond that we all swim in, I never worry about kind of finding stuff. I more focus on picking horses and leaning in, and where do I put a lot of my energy, because we're always launching a bunch of brands, and some brands, quite frankly, don't need as much help. And the ones who need a lot of help sometimes aren't a good use of our time or money. or relationships. And so I find that very challenging even today, especially with a lot more crayons to choose from. It's like it's very hard. You'd think it'd be easy to just paint the picture, but it's like, again, it's like handing a kid 20 crayons when if you just gave him 5, you'd probably color that page in a lot quicker. But you're giving this kid way too many options, and he's never going to get this drawing done.
Yeah.
And I sometimes feel like that now because there's so much intake of innovation and new categories within beverage. And we also do food. I mean, you
guys do guacamole and hummus, like everything cold.
Yeah, we're not stuck in beverage, but so for us, I think I've never had a fear of kind of the innovation's going to dry up and there's not going to be nothing new to push or peddle or sell or work on, but more like, are we working on the right things? Are we partnering with the right innovation brands? Are we spending our time carving out our space in our truck and spending our sort of like tunnels through the city with the right brands? And I think we are. Poppy's is one of our fastest selling brands in the truck today. And, we had it very early before it was doing the velocities that it's doing today. And I've been asked about it. Like I was a part of the founding team, and I at the end of the day, since the acquisition, everybody's like, "Hey, are you worried? Are you worried? Are you going to lose it?" And that's usually what people are asking me. They're not like, "Oh, what are you doing with all your money?" Because they know it probably got done. But it's like, "Oh, are you worried you're going to lose it?" And I'm like, I probably would be worried if nobody asked me about it.
Yeah.
But the fact that 1,000 people have asked me about it since the announcement only makes me think, listen, I'm part of a conversation of Poppy being bought for billions of dollars to Pepsi. I don't know how that's even bad.
No,
I can't think of one bad thing about it, actually, except for maybe if we did lose it to Pepsi. But then if we lost it to Pepsi, it kind of goes back to the start of HiTouch. I left Coca-Cola because I knew by the time they invested in something that, one, the retailers, especially in natural, would frown on or think that they're going to water this down or they're not going to want to be associated with it. And and two, I just thought that being in Los Angeles, that we could be a few years ahead before the strategics were going to actually go write a check and acquire something. Like we could sort of be the feeder system to that. That was sort of the whole accidental goal of,
kids got to go to elementary school too,
right. And it's like, people always said, you're just incubator. And for a long time, what I didn't realize was sometimes being only an incubator is not good, right? Because that basically means that after a certain stage, your system's not that valuable to them anymore, right? They want to grow up and scale.
Yeah.
And I think the jury's still out on how you could hold on. Like if you're an incubator distributor in a strategic market, I think there's definitely a way to continue that relationship as brands scale outside of your network, right?
So talking about different networks, like the news that shook the earth last month was Stone and Scout get acquired, right?
Yes.
So Sunset's coming to town.
Yes.
And what's interesting is there's 2 fewer independent doors to knock on now. Like you're really becoming kind of the last independent after Sunset. What do you think that does to the landscape?
I wonder if there's anybody here from that group.
I've seen the list and they're not, so you can say whatever you want.
Well, I was just going to try and just shake somebody's hand because you know better than me. I mean, you know those folks intimately.
I've never met the Sunset guys, but I do know.
But Scout and
I know the Scout Classic guys and the Stone guys.
And we have spoken to them several times.
No, and I misspoke. I said Scout. It's Classic.
Oh,
my CJ Sanchez is kind of collected to both, so I got confused. But it was Classic and Stone.
And Stone, but. Well, listen, we've spoken to we know all 3 systems. And
because you work with those guys a little bit, because like your business really isn't defined by territory like most distributors. Yours is really defined by customers.
Right, and that's interesting, right? If you think about it, I feel like old kind of like beer prohibition has still kind of this legacy of where beer distributors are still like the only distributors that can tell a big retailer, like, no, we don't leave Orange County. Or LA, that's somebody else. Like, I mean, if you were trying to tell that to Whole Foods, they'd be like, well, we're just not going to work with you then. Like, if you're telling me I need 5 different systems for California, like, we're not talking to you then, right? only the beer guys can get away with that.
Yeah.
And I still don't know why.
Well, the laws meant to limit them have now turned out to be a positive in some places.
And
Yeah.
that could be a whole podcast on its own, I think.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting from where I sit, right? And
Yeah.
I've always been fascinated at the distributors that make that to have such large revenue streams in like Los Angeles County. I mean, people don't know that HiTouch covers 3 states. I mean, we operate in the whole state of Arizona. We operate in Las Vegas, Nevada, and practically half of California. And I've known distributors that sell to like food service or restaurant that haven't left Los Angeles and did $150 million in revenue and sold to Cisco and didn't even leave LA County with 20 trucks.
Sounds like a better idea, doesn't it?
It really, really this is why I tell my kids, you should go to school. You like, don't just be an entrepreneur like your dumb dad. Like, go to school. Because maybe I would have learned something about like logistics and economics and like density and efficiencies and we were always customer centric. I never looked at I think even one time early in our relationship, Dino, you told me we were a logistic company, and I was like, you're the first guy in 10 years that ever told me that. Because I never looked at my business like a logistic.
All you guys do is deliver boxes.
Right, and like, it's so true. That's why I remember the statement. But the reality is we are a logistics company.
Yeah, but I think that to push back on what I said, you're a sales organization too. Your team out there hand selling.
We are, and I've always been like, that's the fun of the business, is like serving the customer and being sort of that middleman to the innovation and to the retailer. Like, that's where we feel like we offer the most value. But at the end of the day, you have to run a very logistically tight operation, or you will just drain so much capital that you'll be out of business. Yeah. And this is why competitors don't really exist. I think the barrier to entry to do what we're doing today is so great that I feel like I wish somebody else would come and compete. I mean, I look at the Northeast and there's a few options, like when you're serving natural. If you're a brand trying to enter natural in the Northeast, you've got Dora's, you've got Rainforest, you have Geyser, you have several systems that sort of will serve the natural channel outside of the beer.
That market, New York market is chaos.
But why LA? Why in LA?
Because it's easy here. It's not like New York. There's nothing easy.
I don't. Maybe because the land is so vast. Like, that's kind of what I think of. Like, when you think about distribution, and again, if you're thinking about logistics, you think about density and efficiency. It's hard to have density in the deserts of Southern California, right? There's a lot of desert here. People don't know that. We have a lot of desert and a lot of ghettos. Like, some people that don't know LA
I think they call those food deserts.
So yeah, the food deserts, or I used to tell you, like, you know why, if I showed you a heater map, why we have a big black hole in South Central LA? I mean, there's a reason for it. And it's because, we sell very, high-end beverages, really. At the end of the day, I mean, Erewhon is one of my fastest-growing customers, and they're selling, I think, an Erewhon hoodie. So their last I heard was $300. So.
Well, let's do this. Let's get you back out there. You had a line of brands trying to talk to you when I pulled you in here by the arm. But thank you so much for sitting down with us, Czar. I really appreciate it, man. Thank you
for having me.